This New Year's, join Caroline Quinn, supernatural troubleshooter and vampire hunter, as she battles cultists, undead creatures, and a death god in a high-stakes New Year's Eve showdown. Can she defeat a malevolent evil she's never experienced before? And what will be left of her?
What's that? You want to be scared? Come with me. You will experience tales of horror, ghosts, and death. It is not recommended for the weak at heart. Listen in the dark. It's more fun that way. This is Weekly Spooky.
Hello, my spookies. It's New Year's Eve, and time for one more terrifying tale to titillate you here at Weekly Spooky before we head into 2025. I'm your host and narrator Enrique Couto, and for over 300 episodes, we've shared something scary and fun for you to enjoy. And 2025 will be no different. So why not end this year, a year with so many new spookies, so many new stories? End it on a high note, right? But before we get to that, thank you so much for all your support this year, for all of your support over on Patreon, for all your support subscribing and leaving 5-star ratings. It really does mean the world to me. And I'm warning you, on the other side of this episode, when I come back and talk to you, I might get a little sentimental. So, you've been warned. But about tonight's story, New Year's Eve is a time for celebration, for resolutions, and for starting fresh. But what if instead of ringing in the new year, you found yourself fighting to survive the night? What if an ancient force decided this New Year's would be the last? Get comfortable as we find out if this is indeed the last New Year's Eve, right after this. New Year's Evil, a paranormal thriller from the case files of Caroline Quinn by Mike Ashkewe. New Year's Eve, 2012. End of the world, or so I hear. Yeah, right. It should be a time where you reflect on the year and how you've grown and what you should be grateful for, blah, 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 sentimental bullshit. I, on the other hand, loved going out for drinks with the girls. Pick up a guy or girl, whoever looks fun, and frankly, party on. This year is not going to be like that, or at least this story won't end up with me losing my shoes and doing the walk of shame into a 7-Eleven for a Slurpee on New Year's morning. Instead, you get me, your favorite Ghoul School graduate and recently instituted federal agent, Caroline Quinn, the government's own supernatural badass. We're called troubleshooters, and there aren't a lot of us. In my graduating class, there were maybe 5 others like myself, a blend of the superpowered and supernatural, aka the government-sponsored freak shows. Government goons who fight real-life monsters, the kind of stuff that was once only found in books and fairy tales. Cool, huh? However, that's not what's important. This part is actually pretty cool and not many know about it. Ghoul School. What's that, you ask? Well, back when the world, changed and suddenly superpowers and the supernatural just randomly started to coexist in the mid-1950s. So now we have assholes who can fly and assholes who suck blood, who can also fly, but it's complicated. Long story short, spandex fights Dracula and even the occasional Frankenstein-like things. We call them Frankies for short. Weirdly more common than you might think, and it's usually pharmaceutical companies. Anyway, so my mom was a vampire and my dad wasn't, but he was into the whole undead thing. Vamps are sexy, I guess. No, just gross, but I digress. My dad is what they call a ghoul, but not like an undead zombie thing, more like a bonded to vampiric host sort of thing. It sounds less fucked up if I use the science terms I learned at the academy. 9 months later, and I'm sure stuff that would render years of therapy if I lingered on it, I was born. So one night back when I was 12, a couple of bad-looking motherfuckers who looked like the Men in Black showed up for a chat. They pointed an ultraviolet shotgun at my mom and pistol-whipped my dad and said, "We know your kid is special. We're taking her, and if all goes nice and smooth, she'll see you when she graduates from our little school. Do anything but say that your daughter is on scholarship to a private school, and you'll be dissected. Am I clear?" That was my life for 6 years at Ghoul School. It never officially had a name, but all of us kids nicknamed it Ghoul School. And that's where I'm headed, and it happened to be in the dullest place you can imagine. Ohio. I know, right? I got a call from a friend, Sammy, who works at the school, and said that I needed to come home, but it absolutely had to be tonight. He sounded panicked, and that was not what I knew of Sammy. December 31st, 2012. This is not what I had planned for New Year's Eve this year. I had actually had a date tonight. She was a nice girl I met at the academy after I graduated. Her name was Rianne. She was cute, and I was totally into her. Instead, I drove through the backwoods of Ohio on New Year's and investigated something weird. It could be something, or it could be nothing entirely. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Didn't need to be a super or something else to know something was going to go down at my old school. I was a few hours out from campus, near Youngstown. Sammy had said that he noticed some of the newer kids were acting weirder than normal, and something felt off. He'd mentioned that one day one of their cell phones was confiscated, and it had very threatening messages, and not something as fun as a school shooting either. No, seriously, how the fuck is that still a thing in 2012? Especially since now the kids can literally pack as much firepower into their own fists as some militaries. I guess I should be thankful someone who can melt people with their eyes hasn't had a bad day in PE. Yet. Way of the world, I guess. Still sucks, though. Anyway, Sammy had mentioned a name, and that immediately set off alarm bells. Yasu. When things got weird in the world, things got weird. It wasn't just vampires and shit that became real. It was things that were like nuclear threat level worse. Demons, specters, and rumor has it even death gods. Things got understandably bizarre in the post-changed world, but things that literally could rise from the grave and command armies of the undead, I'm not a fan of, even if I share some of that supposed supernatural blood running in my veins. Part of my occult schooling involved learning about what new world I was a part of, but also the part that I would protect it and draw a paycheck at the same time. Get some great education, learn rules, laws, and regulations, and then privately enforce the law for Uncle Sam and protect the country, and even the world at large. It's a lot less cool than it sounds, but no student loans to pay back, so bonus? Yasu was some long-forgotten god from somewhere in Asia, and probably for good reason. A death cult that was left out of most history books and written off as myth by many. Now, there's not an unreasonable possibility that this thing was potentially returning for a comeback tour in 2012. Great timing, if I do say so myself. As a favorite cartoon of mine once said, he makes Gozer look like Little Mary Sunshine. Clearly, I'm in for a fun time if he's right, but I am so praying this is just a bunch of edgelords trying to look cool in a school full of weirdos. This is great, isn't it? A dipshit with a Twitter account thinks they can summon Great Value Cthulhu. Sammy knew something was up, but didn't want to get the kids in harm's way. Call me up and hopefully come in quickly, quietly, and do it before Uncle Sam decides to use all necessary force. The school had security, some super-powered individuals of their own, but something feels wrong. You should go back to your old school to say, "Hey, what's up? let's grab a drink. Not me, though. I get to spend my New Year's Eve potentially stopping the resurrection of a death god. Or I break up some dorky kid's New Year's Eve party, which was their ticket into someone's pants for a night. Save the world or cockblock someone. Fuck. Please let this be a false alarm and just be someone overreacting to some kid trying to sound cool. I suppose on the bonus side of all this, I can stop by the old cafeteria and see if they still make the best tuna sandwich in Ohio. If I can make it there in time. Not exactly how I envisioned ringing in the new year. I should be getting drunk and getting laid, but here we are. Go me, right?
Don't go away. Weekly Spooky will be right back.
It's about 10 p.m. when I finally arrive at the school. Big, expensive, and like Oprah and Martha Stewart designed the campus. It was pretty in a weird, artificial sort of way, but definitely doesn't give off super secret government institution for superpowers vibes. You'd think someone built an Ivy League school in the middle of the woods, and on one hand, you're right, except it's fully razor wire enclosed and has armed patrols near its grounds. Definitely missed dinner, though. The cafe closed hours ago. I wasn't even checked by guards when crossing over the perimeter. Okay, that's not normal. Calling Sammy's cell and all I get is voicemail. I'm definitely not liking this. Parking in the visitor's lot, I step out into the cold December air. I look around the empty school grounds and I can hear music coming from somewhere close. I don't see anyone around, though. No guards, no kids, and definitely no one in charge. The parties should be happening in the dorms with the older kids. Gotta keep whatever damage happens to a minimum tonight. I guess I'm going non-lethal. Tasers, pepper spray. I also have my abilities. Super strength, speed, durability, beyond the means of mere mortals at least. And I can see in the dark most of the time. I also heal super quickly, should something be able to hurt me. I can shrug off most types of damage unless it comes from a supernatural or superpowered force, and it's pretty reasonable to assume that I'll run into some kind of trouble tonight. At the very least, I'm probably going to ruin my new winter coat, which I bought myself for Christmas. Wouldn't be a government operation without some cool toys, though. Director James Carlson, the new guy at the Department of Paranormal Researches, made sure we always had options in our field assignments. Now that's the kicker here, though. This isn't a sanctioned operation. This is so off the books that if I get caught or this makes the newspaper somehow, I am likely going to end up in some deep, dark cell in a prison where not even God could save me, unless he had proper security clearance. A lot is riding on this to keep it quiet, safe, and, above all, make sure no one gets hurt who doesn't need to. Maybe on second thought I better sling the toys and just keep it to pure non-lethals and stuff I can conceal in my purse or under my jacket. I'll take the taser and the spray, nice and tight. Don't want to draw too much attention to myself, but a 6-foot blonde who doesn't exactly dress conservatively is bound to raise a few eyebrows if I get spotted. I stop myself from breathing and focus all of my attention on listening to the environment around the school grounds. Focusing all my supernatural senses and just listening for real signs of life. Talking, movement, fucking anything that doesn't belong. A moment passes and I hear something in the dorms across the parking lot. I carefully isolate the sound from the music that's pounding and almost overwhelming my senses. This is deliberate. This music is covering something up, or is a part of it. A low murmur in a language I don't recognize, but I know it's bad news. It sounds like a group of voices are chanting or singing something deeply weird. Guess it's time to go. I feel weird leaving behind all the weapons in the car, in case I run into something a little harder to kill than some gifted weirdo with who knows what powers. I don't feel good leaving behind my actual handgun, but I'd rather not accidentally shoot through a wall and hurt someone. I briskly walk across the lot and head towards the courtyard in front of the school dorms. A lot of memories come flooding back as I cross the yard. I smile briefly as I look at one particular tree. That tree is where I kissed my first boyfriend, Dan. He was all right, but it was his sister who was really into me, and she and I dated for a few semesters. Surprisingly, Dan was cool about it because he wanted his sister, Lori, to be happy. They were good kids. It's too bad they didn't make it to graduation day. I miss them. A schoolyard fight went wrong, and one of the other freak shows decided to use their pyrokinetic abilities to burn them to cinders. School security didn't waste any time in putting down the offender in spectacular fashion. Security Officer Franklin Wick, aka Boyle, used his superpowers to liquefy the water inside the attacker and turned them into a bloody puddle. Fights at Ghoul School could get cataclysmic real fast if security didn't step in. I saw one kid who was partially a gargoyle get torn apart by the school's enhanced guard dogs. It wasn't pretty, and it put us in line pretty quick. The blood spatter wasn't something you could easily forget. There wasn't enough of Dan and Lori to bury. I don't even know if their parents know what really happened. A small tree is planted in the courtyard with a plaque that reads, "May they never be forgotten as we fight forward." I don't know how many died over the course of the school's history, but it's more than a few, but less than a fuck-ton. The government spends a lot of money to protect its investments. Not all kids who are either superpowered, gifted, or supernaturally inclined end up here, but it's enough to make sure it's protected. The United States stands on the front line of this weird occult war and tends to identify the most gifted individuals per its population. Most other nations try to keep those numbers quiet. The U.S. likes to wave its supernatural superhero dick around like a grinning idiot kid who found his dad's gun. Still, there are too many. But that's why I'm here. Maybe I can stop something bad before it really gets going, and somebody else gets hurt. I know it won't bring back Dan and Lori, but yeah, if I could do the right thing, then I absolutely should. Save the world, right? I'll call Sammy's phone one last time before I enter the dorms and hope he picks up. It rings and rings and rings, and then straight to voicemail. I pocket my phone and walk up the stone steps to the dorms. If Sammy is anywhere, it's probably here since he's one of the resident advisors and is probably in the resident advisor's office or in his own suite on the 4th floor. I creak open the double doors and enter the front area of the dorms. It's loud but unnaturally still at the same time. Weird, loud music echoes over the PA systems, and even some of the interior lights are flashing on and off, as if in time with the music. Well, this one just jumped up on the weird shitometer.
Did you hear that? Better check the locks on your doors. Weekly Spooky will be right back.
The front desk is empty as expected, but that may actually work to my advantage. I hop over the desk and thankfully don't tear the ass out of my jeans as I do. The security system is still open and active, and I have a whole suite of cameras across the entire building to look in on. Examining multiple cameras across the 4 floors, and almost immediately I come across the bad news I've been expecting. The 4th floor is filled with people, and some do not look very friendly. It looks like almost all the students and staff have been subdued and are tied up lining the hallways of the 4th floor. Gags and ropes, and some are covered in a weird green goo that I've never seen before. This night just keeps getting better, doesn't it? I see a group of about 6 of them in long, dark robes, being led by a guy in skinny black jeans and a Christmas sweater. Wonderful. A gaggle of goofy wannabe cultists and a dorky Hans Gruber type. He even has the cutest little bit of facial hair, trying to look like Alan Rickman. Just as I'm sitting here giggling to myself, an icicle comes flying out of the darkness and impacts the wall behind my head and explodes into painful icy shards. Before I can even register the shock of the first impact, a flurry of ice spears comes flying at the desk and at me. I throw myself to the floor under the desk and hear more impacts. Oh, fuck me, I quietly whisper to myself as I can hear more hits. The desk is made of heavy wood, but it won't last forever, and I'll have to move. Time to go to work then. I peek around the corner and see if I can spot where the attacks are coming from. My eyesight adjusts to the lighting conditions, and I can see a small shape at the far end of the lobby, hiding behind one of those big, comfy chairs. I can't make out any distinct features, though, but I know they're alone. I can hear just one heartbeat besides my own, and it's beating so fast it's like a rapper's backing track. Hey, could you please stop throwing shit at me for like 5 seconds? I yell from behind the desk and prepare to sprint from my position. If I can distract them for just a moment, I can use that supernatural speed and close the gap and not catch an ice spear in the head. I mean, there is a reasonable chance I'd shrug it off due to my own gifts, but just because you're tough doesn't mean you're reckless. Another impact, and this time I can see the ice penetrate right beside my face. I know it's time to move. I thrust my body forward and move across the room in the blink of an eye, and at the last second I use the chair as a place to jump off and land behind it. Training kicks in, and I'm now in combat mode, and it all happens almost by instinct and sheer will alone. I sweep my leg low and knock my opponent over with tremendous force against the wall. Moving into close range, arms fly forward, and I throw all my strength into pinning their arms while pushing my weight onto them and holding them to the floor. Looking down at my opponent for a second, and I see. It's a kid. She looks frightened and terrified beyond reason. She's an Asian girl who couldn't be more than 14, and that's maybe a stretch. She looks up at me in pure fear and closes her eyes, fully expecting me to end her, right here and right now. I'm not a monster. I try to tell myself that before I go to sleep at night. I put my hand over her mouth firmly. Look, kid, I think we got off on the wrong foot. If I let you go, will you tell me what the fuck is happening around here? She nods, and I can feel some, but not all, of the tension leave her body. I release some of the grip I have on her, and let go of my hold on her mouth. Who are you? She meekly asks. My name is Caroline, and I used to be a student here. I'm here to help. They killed Mr. Reeves. They killed Ms. Simmons. They even killed Lunch Lady Maria. They turned the rest of the staff into monsters, the kid stammered out, then started to cry. Mr. Reeves was also known as Sammy Reeves. Sammy is dead, or at least according to her. I'll deal with this later, but right now, we've got bigger problems. I know how to fight monsters, terrorists, and about 7 different types of zombies, but I don't know how to deal with a kid crying. Okay, look, I'm also a federal agent, and I'm like you, but I figured you guessed that already. What do you mean, monsters? We sat down for a few minutes in the darkness, and talked. And what I heard I didn't like. It seems about 2 days ago, things started getting weird, and then people started dying. She told me about strange creatures that tore the security teams apart, and they looked like something out of a horror movie. Green corpse-like monsters, covered in slime, and their touch that seemed to rot in an instant. Well, this definitely narrows it down. Rots. Servants of death gods. Corpses reanimated by the will of death and powered by the souls of the damned near where they are animated. Usually found in Europe, but more recently on modern battlefields. The unfortunate consequence of war, I'm afraid. Tougher than typical zombies, and had a pleasant side effect of a death touch that basically putrefied you. It's quick, but about one of the most unpleasant ways to die you can imagine. What's your name, kid? Anna Wu. They call me Slush. I'm not good with my powers. You're the first person I've ever successfully used them on. I chuckle at that. Well, to be fair, you didn't land a hit, Anna. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were one of Gary's goons, and I panicked. I'm guessing Gary is the asshole in the Christmas sweater. The others in the robes must be the rots under his control. Anna stopped crying and nodded. He killed my roommate, Sarah. She tried to stop him, but Gary's monsters... Her voice trailed off. I can guess that the rots touched her, and she likely died quickly, but painfully, being rotted from the inside out. God damn, I can't save everyone, but that is no way to die, especially for a kid. Is that how you got away? I didn't want to ask, but I had to know. She protected me while I ran away. I couldn't help her, so she told me to run and hide. Any idea why Gary is doing this? You don't just try to resurrect a death god on New Year's Eve 2012 unless you have a really good reason, or you're some nihilistic little fuck from Tumblr. No, but I know he talks to the dead. He transferred in a few weeks ago from out of the country. An exchange student from South America. I've got a few theories on why, and none of them good or even conclusive at this point. Could be anything from your typical I want to destroy the world twirly mustache to some kind of misguided religious belief, or, my personal favorite, crazy as a shithouse rat, as my dad used to say. All right, cool. So, I got, let me see, a crazy kid who can talk to the dead with about 6 rots under his sway, the resurrection of Yasu likely at hand, and hostages of all shapes and sizes. You know, some girls want to go out and have drinks on New Year's Eve, but instead I get dragged into Caroline and the Apocalypse. Not exactly Dick Clark's Rockin' New Year's Eve at Times Square, but I'm sure I'll find a way to bring a little life to this undead ghoul fest. Next year I am definitely turning off text messages and going someplace sunny. Maybe Disney World. I want my mouse ears.
You're not safe yet. Weekly Spooky will be right back.
I glance at my watch. It's 11:48, and if I'm going to make a move, it has to be now. I'm wondering how useful my new friend Anna is going to be in a fight, especially if things get messy. Not like I have a choice. There's no time to call backup. If I don't solve this problem quickly, then the world won't be around for too much longer. So I need a plan and kick the door down, so to speak. Maybe really fast to kill myself and run the clock out on planet Earth. I can't just pull a Die Hard and expect to survive. I have to think tactically and less like a video game or a comic book. I need a plan B. Wait. Light bulb moment here. I head over to the front desk area and start looking at those camera monitors. We can take out this asshole by going into his blind spots. Yeah, we're going to get this guy and we're going to make goddamn sure he doesn't see us coming. There are 2 staircases with entrances up where Gary and his rots are, and only one of them is currently guarded. Looks like we have our blind spot, but how do we take advantage of it and move them away from the hostages? Well, maybe I can pull a diehard here. Hey, Anna, I have a crazy idea, but I'll need your help. Tell me, do you have fine enough control of your abilities that you can super cool the air? The girl looked at me, confused for a moment, and seemed to think pretty hard for a second, but nodded at me. Yeah, it was one of the first things I learned to do. My parents didn't have an AC unit, so they'd ask me to do it, but more often than not, I'd freeze the house. Cute, a living air conditioning unit. Save a few bucks anywhere you can, right? If she doesn't become a superhero, then she'll be a blast at parties for cold drinks. Okay, maybe this will work after all. Looked at the monitors again, and it seemed like the hostages were relatively safe for the moment. The rots seemed to be guarding a door at the end of the main hallway, so likely the rec room on the 4th floor. Unfortunately, that is the one camera whose feed is currently dark, and I couldn't see anything beyond a sea of static. Fortunately, the front desk had the other component of my plan right there, smiling at me with a large yellow sticky note proclaiming, "Do not touch." The thermostat. Anna, so here's the game plan, and I can't do it without your help. I'm gonna have you super cool the air in the elevator, and I'm gonna fuck with the thermostat. Okay. Why? Science, motherfucker. Instant fog cloud that leaves cover for me to go in there and play Little Miss Badass. We're gonna put you in the top of the elevator where it's nice and safe, and you'll basically keep up the pressure and the cold. I could see the gears turning in Anna's head, and it clicked. Temperature difference, and with someone constantly running the fog machine, it was a perfect way to get an ambush going. Where will you be, Caroline? I'm going to be up the stairs, so when the attention is focused on the elevator doors opening, I can rush in behind them and hopefully clear the rots out before anyone knows what the fuck is happening. Looking at my watch and realizing the clock is starting to wind down, it's likely time to go. All right, 6 potential rots in cloaks, a dork who could talk to the dead, and a death god coming in hot for the new year. What's not to love? I mean, realistically, this could go totally sideways, and the Earth gets plunged into a new dark age under a menacing death deity who hates everything with a pulse. Or we go upstairs, kick some supernatural ass, and get back in time to watch the lame New Year's Eve shows hosted by Carson Daly or whoever the fuck is doing it now. If I end up saving the world tonight, I am getting that sandwich from the cafe before I leave, no matter what. I mess with the thermostat and set it in such a way that things should be downright uncomfortable upstairs in just a few minutes. It's go time. Anna and I walk up to the elevators, and I pry off the top of the ceiling and lift this little girl onto the top of the box. She makes herself as comfortable as she possibly can, but she looks scared shitless, and I don't blame her. This kid has already gone through a lot. And this is the kind of shit that fucks you up for life. Ghoul School always had a way with lasting memories. My scary memory was the death of Dan and Lori. Anna isn't even done with her first few semesters here, so I can only imagine what else is going to happen to her. I sincerely hope she'll have an easier time after tonight. This is heavy and frankly apocalyptic, but she's holding it together. Anna, hit this with as much cold as you can muster. Keep pumping out the cold and absolutely flood the place with fog or whatever. As soon as the elevator doors open, and no matter what you hear until I say all clear, keep it up. I know this is scary and probably isn't the best plan, but I think it's got a solid chance. Okay, Caroline, I got it. I won't let you down. We can stop Gary and help everyone, right? Yeah, I mean, it's either that or we all die horribly. I don't think Anna appreciated my dark sense of humor. No, we'll be fine, kid. I trust you have my back, and it's not like I haven't faced my fair share of weird shit. I winked at her and hit the button for the 4th floor. The doors slid shut, and I sprinted towards the stairwell that led to the upper floors.
More scares to come. Weekly Spooky will be right back.
Trying to be as sneaky as I could moving up the stairs, I didn't exactly wear the most appropriate footwear for an operation. However, sensible shoes be damned, I wanted to look hot. And cool. I also wanted to look cool. I knew this stairwell pretty well. I shared my first kiss with Lori in this place. She was so shy she trembled as I leaned in and kissed her. Okay, gotta get my head in the game. Slowly I squeaked the door open an inch so that I could see into the hallway and assess the situation. I could see probably 12 kids all aged from 10 to probably close to 18 or so huddled around the doors lining the hallway. Like an execution line. This Gary was going to execute them, and likely soon. I looked down at my wristwatch, and Minnie Mouse looked back at me and said 11:57 p.m. The smell from the rots wafted into my nostrils and assaulted it hard. Death has an unmistakable scent, and I've been around it too many times since I became an agent. Putrefied bodies and liquefied organs and so much worse. The rots didn't have much in the way of their faces left. Unfortunately, it was just scraps of flesh clinging to their skeletal remnants. The eyes were no longer human, but burning balls of green light that hated everything it saw before them. "It is almost time. All shall be sacrificed for the glory of Yasu!" A yell came from behind a closed door at the end of the hallway's common room. Don't need to think too hard on who that was. Gary. Screams and yells of resistance from girls and boys, the sound of primal fear that death was coming and nothing short of a miracle could intervene. The elevator doors opened. 4th floor. The air snapped cold in an instant, and ice started forming all over the surfaces like a blast of Arctic air. Moisture froze and hung in the air. Even taking a breath hurt, as my lungs started to freeze up. Anna was not fucking around. This girl had something to prove, and she wasn't going to let fear or doubt get in her way. She was here to save her friends. She was here to save me, too. Throwing the door open like I was smashing through a brick wall, it was time to face down the legions of the undead. No real weapons, but that's perfectly fine. I am a weapon. Reaching into that dark part of myself that comes from my mother's vampiric side and letting the blood in my veins boil over, all remnants of restraint are off. I am going to unleash all the hell and darkness that is embedded in my very essence. Vampire abilities aren't always the same from one to another. We get enhanced strength, speed, and durability, but sometimes other special powers slip through. We can grow wings, claws that cut through a bank vault, and a bloodlust that rivals berserkers of ancient legend. I am moving so fast that time virtually stands still, and I can fully assess the situation before me. The rots are absolutely caught off guard and slowly turn their deceased skulls towards me. Too late. Closing the distance between the stairwell door and the first rot, I strike. This abomination of flesh and bone was mine for the taking. I hit. Hard. Bone craters underneath my foot as I collapse its chest into paste. This meat puppet explodes in a shower of blood and tattered bits of skin, and worse. It flies against the next closest rot, and it knocks it to the floor before it can touch one of the hostages lined up along the hallway. The sheer force of the impact shattered its skull and fragmented it into thousands of pieces. The kids shrieked in panic, but held their position on the floor. 2 rots down, 4 to go. Adrenaline filled my veins, and something deeper from my supernatural side fueled my speed. Snapping my hands at my sides, my vampiric claws extended from my fingers almost 6 inches. supernaturally hardened and ready to take down whatever stood in my way. I've only used my claws a few times, but I know it can cut through military spec armor if necessary. One of the rots slapped me across the face with its skeletal hand. I felt parts of my skin burn and tingle with the infusion of necrotic energy. This rot had moved just as fast as me and was intent on killing me, so I couldn't interfere with its master's plans. I wasn't prepared for the hit, and it stunned me for just a moment. The taste of death filled my mouth. This is what the grave must feel like as time itself eats your flesh. I instinctively grabbed at my face and the wound. I did it without even thinking. My vampiric ability would heal the wound shortly, but I could still die if I didn't get some distance. This was going to cost me my life. The rot was in my face and outreached its claws toward my throat. The first touch was a glancing blow. It wasn't enough to kill. If the undead creature managed to fully grab a hold of my windpipe, then it would use all of its death-fueled grasp to decay the very flesh from my body. I had no time to dodge or maneuver out of the way. It was way too close. I couldn't get enough room to swing my claws at it. Great. I'm going to die before I get a chance to even be assigned a proper field office. A high-powered gust of polar air rushed past the side of my face and knocked me forward and almost flat on my ass. I rolled into it as best I could and tried to regain some semblance of control. It wasn't pretty, but I caught myself before I was completely prone. Anna was right beside me, and her face was as unreadable as an Arctic glacier. Ice flowed from her outstretched hands in an ever-increasing frequency and tempo. The zombie-like creature that had wounded me was now coated in a thick, almost opaque sheet of ice. Unable to move from its frozen tomb, the creature fell to the floor and broke apart. This little powerhouse was done fucking around, and something deep within her had awakened. Anna was ready to throw down, and it seemed like she was going to fully embrace her gifts. I'd only really met her, and something had snapped in her. This was one of those moments that defines us here at Ghoul School. "You need to go. I've got this," the kid said with stern authority that I certainly didn't expect from her. The other rots had turned their attention towards Anna and seemed intent on her. A look of determination had set on the teenager's face. An aura of cold radiated off her, so intense that my eyes felt like they were going to freeze shut. The hallway filled with a blinding cloud of ice and snow, and you couldn't see more than a foot in front of your face. The kids screamed and the rots roared back in retaliation. I glanced at Anna, and she never stopped looking forward. "Caroline, go! Stop Gary! I'll handle this. Let me clear your path." This kid would be a great field agent when the time comes. Anna channeled whatever power she had and thrust her left hand forward in a dramatic gesture. The skeletal-like rots glared back at her and began to advance on our position in the hallway. A glowing sphere of blue energy crackled out from her outstretched hand. She closed her eyes, and a new look of concentration was on her face. The snowstorm in the hallway intensified, and wind whipped around us in a wild, howling storm. "Good luck, kid." I smiled at her and got myself ready to charge down the hallway. You could measure time in heartbeats for a moment. The 4 rots broke through the snowstorm and were right on top of us within seconds. This was it. The air completely changed, and for a second, it was as cold as the depths of outer space. It was like being hit in the face by liquid nitrogen. Cold doesn't even begin to describe it. I closed my eyes reflexively to protect myself. This really was it.
Are you afraid? Good. Weekly Spooky will be right back.
The hallway was dead quiet. No one and nothing moved. I was perceptive of my own heartbeat, and for a second, that was it. I was alone. No, wait. There were more heartbeats, frightened but definitely there. I opened my eyes and saw the once vibrant colored hallway looking like the aftermath of a blizzard. I don't know what I expected to see when I started looking around, but I was pleasantly surprised. The rots were frozen in place in front of us. The undead creatures were completely turned into solid ice and utterly transmuted into something completely harmless. I reached out and pushed one of them. The touch burned my skin from the temperature difference. But they were, for all intents and purposes, dead. Whatever force of malevolence powered their undead forms was completely annihilated. The rots were destroyed and turned into ice sculptures right before us. "Anna?" a boy's voice called out, and it seemed almost hopeful. Then a few more voices called out as the snowstorm dissipated into a light flurry. Good. The hostages, as far as I can tell, are unharmed except for maybe some frostbite. Anna can take care of them. We still, "Yasu, arise and come forth! Devour the unbelievers!" Then blood-curdling screaming, the snapping of bone and flesh, and something indescribable. Gary. I didn't even have time to register that I was flying down the hallway at breakneck speed. My body was rushing forward towards a brightly decorated common room door. I threw my full body weight at it and crashed through and splintered it into pieces as it exploded from the force. Assaulting my senses is the pungent odor of death once again, but also cinnamon. This kid, Gary, is doubled over in a darkened corner of the room and clutching his midsection. He raises his head at me and looks at me with pure daggers and hatred in his beady eyes. The Christmas sweater is drenched in an unfamiliar substance. I couldn't make out much of his form beyond the garish sweater, but what little I could see, I didn't like. This wasn't human anymore. "You dare enter Yasu's domain!" The voice wasn't the same one I had heard in the hallway. This was distorted, warped. This voice wasn't the pimple-faced, dorky teenager named Gary. Yasu had arrived. This horrific blend of flesh and horror stood up to an impossible height as skin sloughed off of their form. Limbs extended to an unnatural length, and what little of Gary's face was left distorted into a mess of tentacles and eyeballs from impossible places. This was a cosmic horror given form right before me. 12 a.m. No time for witty banter, no time for a strategy. Just me and them, tooth and claw. Me and them. No, I had one more weapon in my back pocket. One thing my mom had said to me before I left for ghoul school. It was also the last time I ever saw my parents. "Honey, you're a monster, but you don't have to act like one. You choose what that means." Today, I chose violence. I am a monster, and you will remember my name. I do fucking dare. I flew at this hybrid of Gary and this avatar of the death god Yasu. I extended my claws once again and bared my vampire fangs. Deep inside, I started to let go of all that I had kept in check for what seemed like forever. Gifted and supernatural abilities, and whatever else I had was being unleashed with this flurry of blows. I didn't have time for this to end any other way than Yasu dying, here and now. We got entangled and grappled with each other. Yasu was still bound by some of the limitations of the physical body they were inhabiting. I could use that to my advantage. I'm stronger, faster, and whatever this thing is, it hasn't fully transitioned to its full godly form. It's still vulnerable, and I can stop it. I have to stop it. Claws sunk deep into the creature, and it let out a cry of unnatural pain. I kept slashing and clawing with all that I had in me. Fluid of some kind started oozing out of the wounds. Yasu had weapons of their own, and they dug into me and drew blood. The wounds were deep, the burning pain was unbearable, but I had little choice but to press on with my attack. "You will not stop me!" Yasu's grave voice rattled in my ears, but it wasn't as brave as it was even moments before. Yasu drove a clawed appendage into an open wound on my chest and twisted it like a knife. I yelped out, but still kept fighting back with all I could muster. The death god plunged another attack into me, but made one vital mistake. Yasu left an opening for me to exploit due to Gary's body. He may be taller, but he didn't have my body weight. I threw all my weight into my next follow-up hit and knocked them to the ground and left them momentarily stunned. They didn't think I had much left in the tank, and on one hand, they weren't wrong. I'm about to do something I never wanted to do.
Are you afraid? Good. Weekly Spooky will be right back.
I bared my fangs to their full length and bit down on the befouled neck of Yasu and started to bite. Draining the life from someone or something carries a heavy price that no one talks about outside of vampire circles. You take not just their life essence, but pieces of them, memories, fears, in a short piece of their soul, into your own. It's why a lot of vampires are crazy or are solitary loners. It drives you mad. It takes a toll that no mortal is prepared to deal with. Vampires like my mom were rare. She retained what made her human. I kept sucking blood and life from this horrific creature till it stopped twitching under me. I felt memories of Gary, abuse, bullying, and a lonely kid who saw his powers as a curse. I also had memories and pulses from Yasu, worship, prowess from untold places that gave power, and a bloodlust unlike anything I had ever experienced. After an eternity, it was over. Life had left the body, and it started to decompose before me. I shakily rose to my feet and watched the body melt into the carpeted floor of the common room. Within seconds, it was a puddle of fluids and bits of something I couldn't identify. The taste of blood lingered in my mouth. I don't know what happened next as the adrenaline left me and my claws disengaged and the energy in me dropped like a stone. I felt tears run down my face and all my emotions were all over the place. It was the resonance of the souls I had touched, mixed with my own. I had absorbed something alien. I had absorbed something beyond myself. I had taken lives before, but not like this. There was no bravado in this. There was something in this that felt different. I am different now, and I don't know what that means. I have to leave, but I've got to check on the kids and Anna to make sure things are okay. Am I going to be okay after all this? I could feel the edge of corruption from Gary and Yasu, but I pushed it down to the depths of my psyche to deal with at a later date. Still, a few things to wrap up before I can leave and also phone calls to make. Happy New Year, hey? The Department of Paranormal Resources came in and cleaned up the mess at the school. The feds sent the kids home until a more secure permanent residence could be assured. It won't take too long after all. Uncle Sam wants to keep a tight leash on his investments. I got chewed out by Director Carlson, but also congratulations on a job well done. I had managed to take down a significant paranormal threat without backup. I had lived up to the expectations of my training. I'm not sleeping particularly well after everything, but that's residual psychic resonance from Gary and Yasu. It should pass in a few more weeks, I hope. Carlson's team gave me a pass from the psychics, so I guess I'm good to go. My wounds have mostly healed, but I'll have a scar across my face from where the rot touched me. I think it makes me sexy in a weird way. The department has promoted me to a full agent, and I was to begin my new assignment in New York State before the end of February. I kept in touch with Anna via text. She was in good spirits after the incident. The kids she rescued looked at her in a whole new light now. They won't be calling her Slush anymore. She'll need a cool nickname or title when she graduates out of the program. I hope she has a better time than I did when I went through it all. I attended Sammy's funeral, but I didn't approach his parents or his partner, Franklin. It was a good service, but I kept to myself in the back. I put my hand on his casket and said my goodbyes, and then left as quietly as I came. I'm sorry I couldn't save you, but the kids you helped teach will be the next strong batch of heroes and agents that I'll work alongside. I think that's a pretty powerful legacy, if Anna is any indication of things to come from that graduating class. I hope they give him a memorial like they did for Dan and Lori on school grounds. Everyone who died deserves to be remembered for something. It'll be time to pack up my apartment soon and make my way to New York and see what happens next. I know that girl I was supposed to have a date with, Rianne, lives in New York City, so I'll call her and see if we can take a swing at this. The life of a supernaturally empowered troubleshooter isn't boring, that's for sure. And you know, after all of this, after facing life and death and consuming the blood of some creature beyond all human comprehension of evil, I never did get that damn tuna sandwich either. Well, my spookies, I hope you enjoyed one last terror tale to wrap out a truly wild and never boring 2024. For myself, there was a lot to overcome and a lot to face, but I got to spend a lot of my time this year with all of you, sharing stories and celebrating holidays. Sometimes, if I'm being completely honest, there have been moments where I felt like there was no reason to celebrate a holiday or a birthday or what have you. But then I would remember that I needed to celebrate it with all of you, to make something fun for us all to enjoy, and in that way, I wasn't alone. I didn't feel alone. And that's a big win. So thank you from the bottom of my heart for 5 years and some change of Weekly Spooky. We'll be back tomorrow with a brand new Strickfield mini-series, which I know you'll enjoy. And of course, we'll have a new show every Wednesday going into the new year and a lot of new surprises. I learned a lot about myself and a lot about this podcast and a lot about you spookies while doing it. So I can't wait for the future. I guess you could say I'm feeling pretty hopeful. I'm feeling pretty positive overall. And I hope you are too, even if your year was really challenging, even if you had a lot to be unhappy about. I hope this show has given you something, even just for a short bit of your time. And I do want to say a special thank you to our Patreon podcast boosters. I don't want to plug Patreon because I'm feeling too sentimental, but I do want to say thank you to them. They support the show directly every month. They are Jessica Fuller, Johnny Nix, Jenny Green, Amber Hansford, Brent McCullough, Karen Weemet, Jack Kerr, and Craig Cohen. Thank you all so much. And for my executive producers, Rob Fields, Mark Shields, and Bobbletopia.com, my producer, Dan Wilder, and my composer, Ray Mattis, Happy New Year. Let's make it a great one together.
Thank you for listening. Make sure to find your way back next week. But for now, you are safe. Trust me.